Tales of the Legion Project podcast, Legion of Superheroes Annual 3. Hey everyone, welcome to the 13th episode of the Tales of the Legion Project podcast. I am your host, Peter from the Daily Rios.
And I am your host, Eric from Longbox Review.
Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to our side project, our side podcast, Tales of the Legion Project, where we take a look at annuals, specials, miniseries, movies, current titles, anything and everything having to do with Legion. And who knows, maybe sometime we won't, but today it is. And as I mentioned,
at least not pertaining to the main volume of Legion of Superheroes.
Right.
Just in case this is somebody's first episode.
Right. If this is your first, the regular Legion Project podcast, the episode number matches the title or the issue number. So we had to have a secondary podcast to do all of this other stuff. And that's why we're doing this for annual number 3. This is the Baxter Run annual that came out in 1987. And we are going to follow the same format that we usually do, synopsis, general thoughts, look at the cover, the insides, maybe some feedback, etc., etc. Same format, just a different flavor to it all, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. And Peter, I was looking at this today because I was creating the folder on my computer to house the files that we're making for this. And we had, for Tales episode 2 was annual number 1. I don't know if that was the Baxter one? Because we did the other annual as part of the main show at one point. I remember that.
Right.
And then annual 2 was episode 6, and now here we are, episode 13 with the third annual.
Right. And if we're hoping that you're reading along with us, or you can save it and read the issue and then listen to it, or maybe you're just listening to it because you enjoy our conversations, which is also awesome. It is a story. It is an annual that eventually I can't really say that it's about the Legion of Substitute Heroes, because it's not, but somewhere along the way, it becomes a story about that,
Yeah.
But our very first Tales was the Legion of Substitute Heroes special.
That is right.
So yes. It's almost like we're going back home again.
That infamous special.
Yeah. So
that I'm not a huge fan of in some ways.
Oh, but you loved it. So we'll have to see if this, the Legion of Substitute Heroes is always sort of there in one way or another, and we always seem to come back to it. So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting in our conversation.
Well, and also to tie it back to some other episodes, it features some Academy. We're kind of jumping ahead, but it features some Academy members.
Mm-hmm.
And if I recall correctly, your first Legion comic, which was also one of our Tales episodes about our first Legion comics, heavily featured some of the Academy members too, right?
Yep, I have a huge soft spot for the Academy.
Yeah,
when it comes to the Legion of Superheroes. So yeah, and I'll make some other connections, as I'm sure we both will, about various Legion stuff when we get into it. But we have some feedback, you said, concerning the Tales episodes.
That is right. So I have the first one here from Matt, GD Milkman on Twitter, about the live chat. He said, really enjoyed this, especially as someone who doesn't read Legion. So there you go. It's someone who may not be reading Legion or hasn't read Legion, but it sounds like Matt is enjoying our conversation, or at least he enjoyed the live chat anyway.
Yeah.
And then Jimbo Fett, and this is via Mastodon, which I'm using more and more now over Twitter. But Jimbo Jimbo Fett also messaged me. Maybe it may have been part of the same message, but he was like, I had basically had no idea that we did the show, and once he discovered that, he wanted to go back, and he's catching up with us. So he went back to the beginning and is catching up. Anyway, the feedback that he sent me specifically, he said, I just finished the Legionnaires 3 episode. So great, he said. Peter is amazing for going into the details about the time trapper. I had no idea.
First of all, it's great that someone is discovering the show and jumping in. That's awesome.
Especially, we've been doing this for what, 5
5
years?
years. 5
Yeah.
years. Yeah. And it's great that who was the first? What was the first person's name?
Matt?
Matt. Yeah, that that the live chat was interesting. I'd have to go back and listen to that live chat, see if is it a good first episode, right? Like does it give us flavor for the Legion project? Does it make you want to read the Legion? I mean, we also did an episode on your podcast about the Legion. It was sort of a catch-all episode way back. It was pretty much Legion Project episode 0 in many ways. And I wonder if that could also be a way for people who've never read the Legion. Here's a way to, listen to these episodes, see what you think. See, especially when you hear fans of a certain franchise talk generically, does that, it's like if I would ever listen to like a bunch of Doctor Who fans yammer about Doctor Who, would I finally start watching that show? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd have to listen to an episode first, which that's not high on my list. I'm not sliding Doctor Who. It was just an example. I have no connection to that series whatsoever.
Yeah, you could have substituted Star Trek for that matter, right?
For
someone
oh,
who's
yeah,
not,
sure. Yeah, sure. Right.
Not familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Great feedback. Great.
Yeah. I would like to have more. So if you're listening, hey Jimbo Fett, when you catch up to us, make sure you send us some more feedback there.
Where can they send it to?
It's Longbox Review everywhere. So whether it's on Mastodon or Twitter or on Gmail, it's all Longbox Review.
Awesome. And you can email me, peter@thedailyrios.com. So this is Legion of Superheroes Annual 3, came out in the summer of 1987, July of 1987. Just a few weeks after Legion of Superheroes 39, which we already covered. That's why we're doing the Tales episode, because this is the next issue that was published, in order. We also are going to cover, after the issue, we're going to cover the Legion of Substitute Heroes entry within Who's Who, the update from 1987, issue number 3, which we didn't do last episode in issue 39 because it came out before the annual. So in a way, it's sort of a big spoiler in many ways, not necessarily the information, but just the idea of that Legion of Substitute Heroes, and here are the characters.
Yeah,
it's kind of like a big spoiler. So,
well, and I think we've encountered that before with the Who's Who entries that we've covered. Maybe not as much of an impact as this one necessarily, but there have been a few other things where I was like, wait a minute, if I read that first, then I would have known something about the story that I'm about to read anyway.
Yeah. Did you ever read this issue before?
No,
this
was all new to me.
Did you know what was going to happen by the end?
I did not.
Oh, so actually you didn't read the Who's Who before?
Nope.
Oh, good. All right.
Yeah. So it was a complete surprise. And so I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Oh, that's cool.
What that all means.
Good for you. Because I remember when we talked in 39, you made reference of this book and about, I don't know if you said the Academy or what. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I don't think he knows. Maybe he doesn't know what the ending is to this.
Oh, I think I was reacting to the cover, which I obviously had seen, and we do have a couple Academy members from previous issues on it. So I just assumed.
Okay, very cool, very cool. All right, all right. Well, shall we dig in?
Yes, let's get into it.
Let's go.
All right. League of Superheroes Annual number 3. There's no substitute for the real thing. This is by by Paul Levitz, writer, Greg LaRocque, and Mike DiCarlo, artist, with Arn Starr providing an inking assist. John Costanza, letterer, Carl Gafford, colorist, and Karen Berger, the editor, with a cover by Ken Stacy. The logline for this issue, which appeared in the DC Deluxe Checklist, which is actually on the inside cover of this issue. Can Cosmic Boy and Night Girl form a new legion of substitute heroes to block the Dominator's sneak attack on Earth? You know, I guess there's a spoiler there if you're reading other DC comics that have this entry in it. Anyway, here's what happened in the issue. Cosmic Boy and Night Girl spend some quality time on her home planet of Cthulhu. On Earth, Bouncing Boy takes Legion Academy students Comet Queen, the new Karate Kid, and Vizalad on a training exercise to repair the damaged Nile irrigation system when they receive a Legion notification. Cosmic Boy and Night Girl have been called in by the lone science police officer stationed on Cthulhu to help with an issue with the power grid. As Night Girl explains, light and heat are so important to Cthulhu's survival, we've never had a theft affecting the power grid. They investigate and discover the thief is a Dominator. Cosmic Boy decides to call in the Legion. While the Legionnaires on Earth depart to be the honor guard for the United Planets Dominators Treaty Ceremony on Weber's World, well, that's a mouthful, Bouncing Boy's team is left to man the Mission Monitor Board. Almost immediately, Bouncing Boy receives Cosmic Boy's alarm signal and decides to take all but Vizalad with him to Cthulhu to help. Cosmic Boy, however, isn't too happy to see the students, but decides to lead the group to stop the Dominator's plan to destroy Weber's World and start a war with the United Planets. They attack the outpost, and while they manage to damage the facility, they get sucked into a vortex that drops them into the underdimension. Traveling through that, they find a Dominator dimensional control center and confront the soldiers stationed there. From there, they proceed to the Dominator's home world, in which they get into a fight with more Dominators, discovering that these Dominators are a splinter group intent on warring with the UP. And in a last-ditch effort, the Dominators launch a warship to attack Earth, but Cosmic Boy is able to bring it down. A Dominator signals the Cthulhu contingent to attack Weber's World, but that threat was eliminated by the arrival of Duo Damsel and some other Academy students. Finally, back on Earth, Cosmic Boy and Night Girl discuss the approved treaty and then greet the assembled new Legion of Substitute Heroes, comprised of the 5 who triumphed over the Dominators plus Duo Damsel. A lot of plot in this.
A lot of plot. Well, it is an annual.
Yeah.
42 pages with some pinups.
Yep.
With a pinup, I guess I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. There is a lot of plot, and I felt like because it was an annual, this is just a generic note right at the top here. Levitz allowed himself to, first of all, do a lot of those narrative boxes, those narration boxes that we like, either whether it's from the UP Galactica or some tour guide pamphlet or proverb, poem, he just went crazy with these issue.
Yeah. Just about every scene change had one of those.
Yeah. Every major scene change. And then I also felt like I could also tell I was reading an annual because we talked about this before in a number of the other annuals and with some of the miniseries. There's a slight odd vagueness as to when this takes place, although it absolutely defines itself by the end where it takes place. Levitz isn't forthcoming with a lot of the information. There's absolutely no mention of the last big event that he mentions is the Universal Project. Not to say that he doesn't mention what we just read with the Superboy, Superman stuff, but you read it and you're like, oh, Cosmic Boy's like, that time trapper stuff. Like, stuff, time, the battle, like, okay. So I feel like Levitz does that a lot with these annual, so you can read it by yourself, by
Mm-hmm.
itself.
Yeah, standalone issue.
Total standalone. You don't have to know what's going on with the book. In fact, all the Legionnaires leave Earth, right? So it's like they're not even on the planet. It doesn't have anything to do with them. But then if you are reading it like we're reading it in chronological publishing order, it does have some narrative connection. It's very slight. Um, it's not what I'm still waiting for the reaction to Legion of Superheroes issue 38, to the ending of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in some ways, even though we get a little bit of it here by the end. So that made me read this and go, oh yeah, this is one of those Legion annuals, Legion specials that Levitz loves to, I half expected it to be a different artist because that way it does totally feel like it's not connected.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that we didn't have a Kurt Swan or somebody doing this.
Yeah. I mean, he probably wouldn't have been the best choice because he just did
No.
that,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
Who could have, what if it was Keith Giffen?
That might have made it a little more interesting.
Might have been funnier, you
Oh,
know.
that's for sure.
Humor might have been funnier, but
Although
anyway.
although it would have been the attack of Keith Giffen in that case, because
Mm,
considering it has to do with a substitute heroes group. So
right, right.
could you imagine if he took that that same approach he did on the first one with Cosmic Boy's team? I would be done with Giffen. Done.
Or maybe he would have been smart. Maybe he would have been wily and done a whole 180 and just made it,
Yeah.
that they were the most competent
Right. Yeah.
because it is Cosmic Boy, you know. But anyway, that's speculation. So, um, where do you want to start with? General thoughts or the cover? I mean,
Let,
I sort of gave my
yeah.
general
Yeah.
thoughts a little bit.
Let's just go continue with that.
Okay.
So, as far as kind of my reaction to it, I I really like Cosmic Boy is one of my favorite Legionnaires anyway, and so anytime that we get to see him and he's been around, but there hasn't been a whole lot of real focus on him. Other just real quick scenes here and there. Basically, him and Night Girl not being part of the Legion, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
so having him here, and more importantly, seeing him interact with his girlfriend, his longtime girlfriend, Night Girl now, on her home planet. I just thought that was really nice to see, that personal touch regarding the Legionnaires. They have lives outside of the Legion, and so we get to see him. Not only that, but that we also get to see him lead a small team,
mm-hmm.
which I can't even remember the last time we saw something like that involving him specifically. Um, uh, but then we get to the end and we get this new subs team, right? And it's like this big fanfare event, and you think that there's going to be something else coming along the way, and maybe there is. I don't know, because there's still a few issues between now and when I pick up that I'm more familiar with down the road. I As far as I remember, there's not much at that point where I rejoined the Legion. There's not much involving the subs here. So my guess is, Peter, and you feel free to spoil me if you want. This doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. I was going to say, don't hold your breath.
Yeah, yeah.
Does it lessen the story for you then, knowing if that pans out to be that way, or does it?
Maybe a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, stuff in the Legion kind of comes and goes, and not all the subplots that Levitz has thrown at us. I feel like we've gotten a good resolution to, and that's okay. I don't need every subplot to be resolved in a complete and satisfactory manner. Um, but it just it's Cosmic Boy, and there's a new subs team, and it's different, and the personalities involved. I just the potential for some interesting stories involving these characters is, I mean, he put it in there.
Yeah.
They got it there. They could do something with this. And I can't remember if it was something that I read in the letter column reactions to this annual or if it was something else that I read recently. But Levitz had said something about, in response to one of the letters, or a letter, I should say, that basically there's so much to focus on with the Legion itself that he probably would not focus on whatever that other thing was, whether it's the subs or some other group of Legion adjacent characters. And when I was thinking about this potential quality or lack thereof, I was thinking of that. I'm like, he's not going to do anything with these these characters that he's thrown together
Yeah.
in this annual. So
Yeah. And I've been keeping in the back of my mind the whole notion that he thought he was going to be out with issue 50,
oh right. Mm-hmm.
but then obviously he stays to issue 63.
Mm-hmm.
He is not, he's all about spinning off if they deserve it. Cosmic Boy had a miniseries, which we talked about in a Tales. We talked about Legionnaires 3. So they clearly have enough pull, and he has enough pull, and the book is popular enough that if they wanted to do a Legion of Substitute here, maybe another special down the road or a miniseries,
Mm-hmm.
would it have worked? Did he just know plans were going to wrap up? Did he not want to hand it off to anybody? Like, does he want to hold these characters? Um, yeah, there is some potential, and there's a lot of what ifs when you think about like what it could have been.
Well, I like to think that since you brought it up, I like to think that maybe he had like a special in mind, or maybe a mini series that he would develop between now and issue 50, and it just never got off the ground. So,
or using them in a storyline
yeah.
in a major way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little odd to mix concepts, mix the Legion Academy with the Substitute. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yes. Yeah.
Like, the Academy is supposed to be a way to train younger heroes, I thought, as a line to the main team.
Yes.
The Substitute heroes are like the unofficial cavalry, if you want to say, or the unofficial, they're like minor leagues. And no, they're not like the minor leagues. The Academy is like the minor leagues. Like, I don't know what. They're like a bootleg franchise, because
they're like the arena football to the NFL. No, that's not right either.
I have no idea. Sports. So, but now you have a team within the school. So, like,
yeah.
Wow, does that make them extra special? What do the other Academy members think of now? Not only do they want to be a legion of superheroes, they want to be a Legion of Substitute hero.
That was one of my major questions that I had positioned at the end of my notes to talk about. So yeah, that's the dynamics of this particular sub team. Pardon the pun. It's just rife with internal conflict and jealousy and whatever. And I'm sure it doesn't go anywhere.
It's almost like we really should have had a Legion Academy book, and then you could have had some of this stuff in it, some of this drama in it. And Levitz touches on the Academy quite often. He bounced, like, one of the things I liked about this, you talked about subplots. I actually like that he used Cosmic Boy because he put Saturn Girl back into the Legion. The Trinity, ever since issue 12, they've been on this semi-retired, rotating, rotating permanent advisor. Right. So the three of them have a special designation, and we've seen Saturn Girl with that because of the whole Sensor Girl stuff, but then also the Universal Project, and now she becomes a member. And now this feels like this is a way for Levitz to do something other with Cosmic Boy, even though he had a miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
And then my question at the end of it was, okay, now when is Lightning Lad going to get his turn?
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
Although I guess Legionnaires 3 was kind of that to some degree.
Yeah.
But I see your point. Yeah. There should be something else.
Right. And I think we do get something down the road. So there's the whole thing that you mentioned, Cosmic Boy and Night Girl, they've been in this series. They've been a couple. Um, as we see in this issue, she's been trying to get him to rejoin the Legion, maybe because Saturn Girl rejoined, and it's almost like, she got her powers to land herself Cosmic Boy as a boyfriend. If she couldn't join the Legion, she managed to get a Legion to join her in a way. Like this whole Legion of Substitute, like she's back in the subs, but it's one step closer to the Legion,
Right.
so that's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
So just the fact that he's been using Cosmic Boy and Night Girl, this idea of the permanent rotating, like he wants to give the Trinity something to do. Okay, so we get
Mm-hmm.
that with this issue. And as I said, that goes all the way back to Legion of Superheroes 12. Actually, it goes even further. Um, and then the other thing it connects to is the character of Mig. He finally is, maybe the story was because he needed to do something with that character, because Mig has been around since issue 13, and then we saw him in issue 15, and then we saw him at the Academy in issue 24. So it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're introducing a legacy character like that, Karate Kid #2, you got to give him a story somewhere. So I feel like, okay, then that's another, not necessarily a subplot, but he's been hanging around ever since that issue with Timberwolf, and now he finally gets to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
yeah, it's fine. It's a fine issue. I think as I was reading it, I only really did one read of it, and I was taking notes. I would read a couple pages, take notes, read a couple. I was like, okay. By like midway through, I was like, okay, this is not. There's no need to do a time trapper deep dive for me. There's no need to, it's a fine story. I see where it's going. I already knew the ending. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
even the Dominator stuff is actually a little bit of a holdover from the Universo project
Mm-hmm.
and Ambassador Relnick. Um, so it has a purpose. It does have a purpose, and I'm thankful for that. There's a couple of things I can check off the subplot list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Speaking of the Dominators, just so you know, there is a little bit of history that I going to touch on regarding
okay.
them that does tie directly to this.
Did you read Adventure Comics? What is it? 30 whatever? 3 something? Their first appearance?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I was going to and I did not. So you did your homework. I did not. All right. Before we dig into the rest of the book in a little more detail, why don't we take a look at the cover featuring a new artist
Mm-hmm.
to the Legion, Mr. Ken Stacy, who will be doing more covers in the future as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
What do you think of the cover?
I quite enjoyed this.
Oh, good.
You get Comic Queen, Cosmic Boy, Night Girl, Karate Kid, and Bouncing Boy in this. Basically, it's a pose cover, but it almost looks. I want to say painted, but not. I'm not sure if that's quite accurate. I'm not sure what medium is used here, but it's very colorful. It's very different from anything else that we've seen so far on this run of the Legion. So
Mhm.
I quite enjoyed this.
Yeah. I would think it's probably painted on some level because it's not like they had computer coloring that could do the
Mm,
coloring like that.
that's true.
And when you look at some of his origin, his biography, he was an illustrator, and you look at some of his later works and they do feel very painted, so I'd be
Mm-hmm.
surprised if it wasn't, but it's an interesting composition. It's not realism. It's has this shiny quality to it, right?
Yep.
The all
Yep.
the different metal that gets reflections. I love the use of Comic Queen's trail as kind of a guide to the composition. That
Mm-hmm.
circular spiral heading all the way back to the globe. Um, yeah, it's unique. It's a little dark on the printed page. I don't know necessarily how well it would stand out among other books, but um, it's very different from what we're used to.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. I have a few points about Stacy's work, since this is the first time that we've encountered him on the Legion.
Hmm.
Because I honestly didn't know this. All I knew of Stacy's work are the covers he did that I've seen. Mostly for Legion. There was one for the New Teen Titans, issue 47, that I do remember distinctly. Um, but probably my first exposure to his work would have been the Wanderers #1
Yeah.
that I picked up many years ago.
Uh-huh.
He has, however, he had worked on Astro Boy for Now Comics and Johnny Quest for Kamiko. And I think if my information is correct, his first DC cover art was for Electric Warriors #10. And then just a few years from now, in terms of publication of this annual, DC released his miniseries Tempest Fugitive.
Yeah.
Did you ever read that?
No.
I haven't either.
I've seen it. I saw house ads. I never picked it up at the time. I wasn't really reading much comics in 1990, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it kind of missed me.
And then finally, Aaron from Indianapolis in the letter column put this cover in his top 5 of the Baxter series.
Wow.
Top 5. What do you think about that, Peter?
No. I like it. I don't like it that much.
top 10?
No.
Really?
No.
I
It,
I I would just say it's very distinctive for this book. So
right. Right. Yeah, that's been in my notes for a while to do a favorite cover, episode for us or segment.
mhm.
We'll have to. I thought about doing it when we reach the halfway point, but at this point, we might as well wait till we're done. And then years from now, we can do. All right, give me your top 10 or top 5 favorite covers of the entire run. But this would
A
not be.
post run episode. Yeah.
Yeah, right. When we're sad and we have nothing else to talk about.
That's right.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
good, and there's like a futuristic quality to it as
Mhm.
well. I'm not downplaying what I appreciate of this cover. Um, from what I remember of some of the covers coming up from him, there's other ones that I prefer.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, I'll have to keep that in mind then.
yeah, but it's nice to see someone different, and
Yes.
uh, DC probably wanting to play around with different ways to do covers, maybe, and um, Perez did one of those New Teen Titan annuals. I think the very first one, I think, where they're often with the Omega Men and all that. That was like a
Mm-hmm.
painted cover, and he did a
Yes.
few other ones as well for the
Yep.
Baxter series. So okay, yeah, great. There was an early Hulk issue that he did right before this that I did
Oh.
collect. When I looked at his cover gallery, I was like, oh yeah, I had that Hulk issue.
Hmm.
So yeah, not totally fine. Doesn't give anything away for the story. But yet it okay, these are the characters you're going to read about.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, how do you want to go about discussing this annual? Because I don't know if I have much to say.
I mean, the bulk of it is their little adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We could just quickly go through it scene by scene, I guess.
Okay, yeah. So the first 4 pages is Colossal Boy, Colossal Boy,
Wrong
Cosmic
episode.
Boy. Yeah, really. Cosmic Boy and Night Girl on Cthulhu. What I took away from this scene is that Levitz is really good at setting up a book. We got their names, we got their purpose, we got the reason why they came together. We have some slight idea about what's going on in Cosmic Boy's life at the time. And another reason I really pointed that out is because I've been reading some modern comics that do a very piss poor job of that. And and it was so nice to actually see that within this first scene.
Yeah, and it doesn't, we know all this stuff, obviously, because we've been reading this book, but
Mhm.
it never comes across as too didactic. It it
Mhm.
it does seem conversational, and he does it. Levis is very deft at conveying that information in a natural sounding way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's very well done. You're right. The more modern comics don't do that very well.
No.
What do you think about I guess Night Girl in this scene?
Greg LaRocque loves to draw women.
That's true. Very true. She's for someone, well, no, I was just say for someone who has come across in stories past as a bit of a wallflower,
Mm-hmm.
a bit passive in some ways. I mean, she sort of because she did pursue Cosmic Boy. She got her powers because she wanted to join the Legion so that she could be with. Did I say Power Boy? Cosmic Boy? I don't know what I said now. So she there was always something to this character that they never really explored early on with her. It was just more of a convenience of to explain her motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And here, I think we get kind of more the same of that. I don't mean it in the way that these words are usually used together, but passive aggressive. She's playful with her boyfriend, but there's that scene where he's kind of teasing her. He says, "Unless you don't care about me now that I'm not a dashing legionnaire anymore," and she grabs his, I don't know, a floating disc, magnetic floating disc, because he can use his magnetic powers to move it, but grabs it and cracks it. But telling him, "Of course, I still love you, even if I did try to talk you into rejoining." And but just the way that LaRocque drew that particular panel, she is a bit menacing. She comes across just a little bit menacing too. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that's how I took it.
There's something in her or there could be something in her character that is never explored. I'm just
Mm.
riffing on this, but the notion that she gets more powerful in darkness
Mm-hmm.
also tends to I wonder, and we're on her home planet, which is in perpetual darkness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with her strength, what does that do to her mentally? Does she
So
become another person in a way?
a bit of a Hulk situation.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
that's a good point. I see that would make her even more interesting to me than she's already being portrayed here.
right. So instead of maybe aggression, it's more confidence and
Mm-hmm.
I mean she has the owl as her symbol. They're not the nicest creatures sometimes. They're predatory in many ways, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. You don't you really don't think about owls in that way. They usually just appear docile up in the tree, right?
Hmm.
But they're up there looking for their food.
Yeah,
So
so yeah, somebody could make a cool story about that if they wanted
yeah,
to. Yeah.
yeah. I also want to point out I love the way that the artists portray the Cthulhu sun, the blocked sun, the
Mm.
eclipsed sun, in a few pages throughout the annual here. It's very simple. It's just circles, but it really just evokes this idea of this planet being in perpetual darkness.
Yeah, the splash page is a good establishing shot, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably the most information that we've learned about Cthulhu in any Legion comic, probably. I don't know.
That's true.
You know.
The only other thing I want to point out, because this comes up multiple times in not just in this annual, but in other appearances that Night Girl has had, where she seems to be trying to talk Cosmic Boy into rejoining the Legion.
Right.
And it's very prominent in this issue, but we have read that before, and I found that perplexing, I guess, because she doesn't. While she makes these comments, and I guess that's also where I'm kind of getting that passive aggressiveness from her, because she makes these comments about him rejoining, but as soon as he rebuffs her, she's like, yeah, well, that last on page 4, that last page of that first scene, seriously, why won't you consider going back? She says. And then he answers, this is the thing he talks about the time trapper. And um, Cosmic Boy wants to work on, getting that all squared away, what kind of changes that time trapper may have done. Um, and so he's basically between the Legion and the Academy and whatever, they've got it covered. And her response is, none as cute as you, fella, concerning the Legion, right? And so she's kind of drops it,
Yeah.
but it keeps coming up, and then we get the end result, right?
Right.
Like you said before, she gets something along those lines. So maybe that's enough.
And maybe that's a little misstep on Levitz's part, that we're not really seeing what she's seeing. Maybe she's seeing Cosmic Boy and he's restless.
Of
I
course,
mean,
yeah.
they're only in their, he's probably in his early 20s. He can't retire now. It's too soon. So I think the more interesting thing about that page is what he's talking about. Although Levitz is not going to touch on it in this issue. I haven't squared away all of the misconceptions Time Trapper created about our history. I won't mind working on that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, yeah, I want that. That's what I
Yeah,
want. I want
exactly.
that stuff.
Yes.
Give me
Mm-hmm.
that. So,
Oh, see right there. That's either that's a running subplot through the issues coming up next, leading up to issue. Is it 50 where they have the big?
yep.
Yeah. Or a separate miniseries that is a tie-in to that.
Yeah.
That they it's too bad.
Then the next couple pages, we get a training scenario with Bouncing Boy and a few recruits from the Legion Academy, a few members. We have Comic Queen, who we've seen before, Mig, who is now going by Karate Kid with a new costume,
Mm-hmm.
and Vizilad, who is making his first appearance as they try to work on a irrigation system that's running wild. Basically, Levitt showing us who the characters are going to be, in the rest of the book. We've seen scenes like this before. People going off. It's like they always, some public work system is crashing down because of years, centuries of,
As I say, the infrastructure of 31st century or 30th century Earth at the in the series is just not great.
Slowly crumbling.
Kind of like the modern US. Yeah, so Comic Queen kind of has a slightly different costume.
Yes,
right? With
does.
with that kind of sash looking thing going across her.
Yeah, not a fan.
Yeah. But I was going to ask you specifically, what do you think about the change to Karate Kid's costume?
Yeah, and I went back and looked in the other one, and it still has a similar design. The red and
Mm-hmm.
black coloring, the
Mm-hmm.
the markings, the whatever those markings are. The original look was a little probably too close to the original Karate Kid.
With the flared collar and whatnot. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it had an interesting design. It almost looked like the black markings on the chest was like a demon of some sort. Whereas this
Mm-hmm.
one, this doesn't quite have that same feel. I don't mind the mask. I don't understand why someone would need the mask.
That was my point in my notes too. Is like, why is he wearing a mask?
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
There probably was a better option somewhere along the way.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And poor Vizilad. I thought it was interesting this character with basically we only get to see him use. Well, we actually only get to see him use one of his visual powers, but he does mention the other one in his first appearance. But he basically has I'll just say Superboy visual powers, or at least that it's heavily implied he's got more than just telescopic, what he calls what do you call it, maxi optic, and then his thermal optic, which is heat vision. So
not necessarily inspired. It's not an inspired. We've seen other.
So why even introduce a new character? Why not?
Yeah,
Why not include one of the existing, more non-essential Legion Academy members?
he had to have somebody to leave behind in that next,
Sure.
in the next scene. So
Mm-hmm.
you leave behind the guy who's not going to really, I don't know, because
Well,
some of them come across very clumsy, except for Mig, but he's a little headstrong.
mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say this was a very successful mission. Comic Queen, she's her her attention span is all over the place. Vizslad's not really in control of his powers. It's sort of unfortunate that every time we see something like this, I don't know, maybe it speaks to Bouncing Boy. Maybe he's not that great of a teacher.
I had not considered that, but I think you're right. Yeah, he doesn't well, and especially there's a scene coming up here where it's like that is not the way to speak to a student,
Yeah, yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
yeah. So maybe I think you're right, but yeah, the whole. I mean, the Bouncing Boy clearly states here. I was going to say I thought maybe he said he convinced them, but anyway, the science police will let us try to handle this as a practical training exercise if you can repair the pumping station quickly enough. Um, but we don't see that. We don't see them repairing anything. In fact, Meg actually damages the system by unstopping the drain by busting through it. So they actually failed in their objective. So yeah, I think maybe Bouncing Boy is probably not the best, especially field instructor. Point of order though, they get this signal on their Legion flight rings, which
Hmm.
confuses them. What is that for?
Yeah, it's a little confusing. Like, oh, that's for I think that's for Polar Boy calling them back because all the Legionnaires were going to go away.
Yes,
That's the only thing I can sort of connect it to.
and I agree. But given that the next scene that we're going to get into, what we see is Cosmic Boy sending out the signal.
Right,
You know, quite honestly, I read that as they all got they all got his alarm signal.
right.
But then that you go to the next scene after this, and then it becomes very clear. It's just
Yeah.
to me that's a confusing little plot element that could have been smoothed over a little better.
So then pages 8 through 11, we are back on Cthulhu. There's a mystery of energy being sucked away. Um, and Cosmic Boy and Night Girl are investigating, and that's where they stumble upon, oh, look, Dominators on Cthulhu. What? Um, this sequence, to go back to what I said about Paul Levitt's using this book to kind of talk about various locations, we also get some of that from Cosmic Boy too. But if I was Night Girl, I would have bopped him in the head because he seems to suggest that Cthulhu is not as advanced as Earth. He calls it a backwater. He says that, you know, I can understand if this was a more developed world. He says there's less industry on this world than on Earth. Um, I can totally see where obviously there's different levels of technology all over the world, but this is your girlfriend's, hometown.
Yeah, yeah,
He's up there.
yeah. He comes across as mostly annoyed in this scene.
Yeah,
That he's even. I wasn't sure. Is he just kind of upset because their little vacation or relaxation time has been interrupted for this silly little power anomaly?
right. Well, I mean, he says it later. He's like, we'll just wait here until the Legionnaires show up. I resigned. I was like, what? That's not
Yeah,
Cosmic Boy.
right. That's it. That seemed out of character to me as well.
Yeah,
So in other words, it's really just a plot contrivance to progress it in a certain way, right?
right, right.
But what I do like about this scene, and I totally agree with you, my girl should have super strength smacked him upside the head there. But we get to see Cosmic Boy using his powers in a slightly different way than we've seen.
Hmm.
By let's see, I'll try. He says I'll try projecting a magnetic pattern of my own because well that it's a whole lot less industry since Cthulhu's got much less industry than Earth and a weaker magnetic field, then he's going to project this pattern. And then he says all concentrations of electrical energy affect magnetic fields, especially ones as great as the one the science police officer was worrying about. And so he's able to detect the warping of the magnetic forces and pinpoint the area but where this is going on. So I thought that was a really cool, actually scientific way to to use his abilities. And
Hmm.
this is not the only. There's another thing he does as well. I think I'm not sure where exactly it is at this moment, but there's something else that I noted where he's using his magnetic powers just a little differently than we've seen before. And so I thought that was really cool, given that it is really kind of a cosmic boy spotlight.
Yeah. Maybe that's where his annoyance comes in because you have to start him at that place of like, no, I don't want this life. So that by the end, he's like, okay, maybe I do want this life as long as it's under my terms
Right.
and under, you know,
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, that was not strong enough.
no, no. Anything else with that sequence?
No, other than on page 10, yet another eclipse sun panel, which I for some reason I really like, and the coloring with the purple
Hmm.
and the blacks that they're using, it just looks really cool.
Right. Learning about moon bats, the sacred creature on Cthulhu.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of
She almost
course
is, she's
you have to
striking
have.
almost like a Batman pose there.
Oh, I was gonna say you have to have something about bats in a night scene, right?
Yeah.
It's DC comic, but you're right. That is, I hadn't noticed that. That is kind of a the way your cape is flaring there. It is kind of a Batman like pose.
Yeah. Or Batgirl or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then, like as we said, the Academy members wind up at the Legion headquarters. All the Legionnaires, Paul Levitt's he's got to get them out of the book because they're not important to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get the alert and they wind up with Cosmic Boy. Um, this is probably that scene where you're talking about Bouncing Boy being quite rough with, although they had that short story together, so he should almost be familiar with what the way Comic Queen is.
Yeah, he seems overly and perhaps uncharacteristically um, terse with her.
Yeah. Shut
You
up,
know,
Comic Queen.
yeah, shut up. Yeah, that's just
Listen or leave.
yeah. It's almost like when he comes back to the clubhouse, he feels like he has to behave a certain way or appear more, I don't know, in control, or I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, you can almost extrapolate that kind of a behavioral change because he's not at the academy,
Right.
he's at the big house now. So
Right. Right. And then promptly leaves and leaves everything with Visalad. What?
right, so okay, so we had, I can't remember which issue it was, but it was a recent issue, or actually two issues because we carried over, where Polar Boy, leader of the Legion, was second guessing himself about certain things, right? So a bunch of Legionnaires wanted to go off and oh boy, I'm blanking, Peter. What was it they wanted to go take care of? And Polar Boy was like, no, we need to leave some Legionnaires behind in case Earth gets attacked,
Oh,
right?
that was
And
the time trapper. Yeah.
time, oh yeah, okay. And so we saw, like I said, over the course of two issues, he's had separate conversations with different Legionnaires about that situation, and then what does he do? He sends everybody off Earth. I don't care that it's this big UP dominator treaty thing. I mean, that seems really stupid and again uncharacteristic given what we've already seen or already have been shown.
Yeah, that's Levitt's doing shorthand. Just,
Yes, and not the good kind is my
right.
point.
Because he's got to set up someone back at the headquarters so that he can set up the ending
Mm-hmm.
reveal of, the people that
Mm,
saved the day and blah, blah.
right,
Yeah.
right. But yeah, this is what I was referring to earlier. Poor Visalad, he gets left behind at the mission monitor board, which is kind of funny though. I mean, Visalad watching the monitor board.
Hmm. Hmm.
I, you know, for a little gag, I guess it's okay.
And we do get a resolution for Cosmic Boy in the next scene of, him being Mr. Grumpy Pants, because he's still not happy with the cap members that show up, but then he's like, wait a minute. You're well trained more than we were when we started this. You're a little bit older. Yes, I should be totally okay with
Yeah.
if you're going to be the people that I have to, depend upon. And I mean, they're
Hmm.
not totally powerless. I mean, Comic Queen, yeah, I mean, I get it. They're not, it's not Mon-El, but okay.
Yeah, particularly like that scene that we get with him. With he's basically trying to talk everybody out of doing anything and waiting for quote unquote the real Legionnaires
Hmm.
to save the day. But then yeah, he's like, wait a minute, what am I saying? So I appreciated that bit of self actualization, no, self realization. There we go
Yeah.
about the situation. Oh, and then after he says, I just noticed this, Peter. I just kind of I guess skipped over this part, but so he says that bit, and Night Girl immediately goes over to him and hugs him, and she's got her leg up. I think I know like that old kind of sexist pose where women kick their heel up when they get
Hmm.
kissed by the guy. But I mean, they're not kissing. That's not what they're showing. So it's kind of weird. But she's rewarding him for his engagement now. I guess
Right.
it's their relationship. I'm realizing from this annual is kind of strange and also interesting.
She wants it. She wanted to be the girlfriend of a Legionnaire, not somebody who's retired.
Yeah, that's true.
Some of the Dominator stuff is, I really didn't take a lot of notes with the Dominator stuff. They're still in the way Levitz handles them, the way they're drawn. They're not quite the Dominators that I know from like Invasion, and certainly not from 5 years later. So
Mm-hmm.
they're still they have many of the same things. They have the caste system. There's a faction that wants peace. That's the faction that's with Relnick, but then everybody, there's certain members on the homeworld that don't want peace. They want war, and that's what they're
Right.
trying to trigger. They're trying to trigger this whole war thing.
Yep.
I wanted that. As I was reading, I was like, oh yeah, they're not quite there yet to the Dominators that I kind of enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so here's where I took a path down Legion history.
Hmm.
And so because that on this is page 17 at the bottom, the Dominators walk in and the leader of the group says, Legionnaires, what a pleasure to see you again. Again. I had to look it up. And so we have the Dominators first appearing in Adventure Comics 361. And they had a very different appearance back then. They were light blue skinned. They did have the discs, but they were at least the initial group that we saw. I think they all had the same size, but the disc color was no. I think the disc color was white, light blue skin with white discs. Their mouths were kind of similar. Now they're light yellow skinned with red discs of various sizes.
Hmm.
In that story in Adventure Comics 361, the issue talks about there was a war between says political factions that came to an end when the Dominion sought a truce. Later, Goltan, the leader of the delegation, tells the Legion that the Dominators are a product of, and this is the delegation that the Legionnaires were escorting to sign a peace treaty. Sound familiar?
Hmm.
The Dominators are a product of millions of years of controlled evolution, taught to be superior to all others whose sole purpose is to conquer and extend the dominion. So even back then in issue 361, they were defined in that way,
Right.
which I you can glean that from the way the Dominators present themselves in these issues that we've encountered them. Maybe not to the fullest extent, or not as directly as in their first appearance, but that seems to have been carried over through the years.
Yeah.
Um, like I said, the Legion was asked to escort the Dominion delegation to the peace talks. The idea of the disc size signifying rank or position was in that original story, so that's carried through. The way back to Earth was through, I believe Brainiac 5 calls it the 10th, or him or Superboy, the 10th dimension via a dimensional warp machine. And Brainiac 5 refers to that as a sub dimension. Distances are all out of proportion with our own. Here we can journey 500 miles overland and re enter our own dimension billions of miles from our starting point.
Right. That'll come up in the back half of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then just a couple more things. In that original story, there were some assassins who were trying to stop the Legion and that delegation.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that, spoilers, that was led by the former Dominion leader who did not want to have peace, whereas presumably a majority of his people did. Again, sounds familiar. And then we do get another appearance by the Dominators in Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes number 243, which was part of the Earth War story.
Mm.
And the reason I point that out is because the Dominators are once again back at the negotiation table with the UP to avoid a war between them and the Kuns. There they are yellow skinned with the red discs, so that's where we get that.
Okay.
And much like this, where the Dominators say, "What a pleasure to see you again." In that story, the Dominators specifically say to, I think it's Relnick as well, if I remember correctly, that they trust the Legion based on their previous encounter with them in Adventure Comics. But then at the end of that Earth War story, the Dominators and the UP, and it's very distinctly referred to, they sign a 1,000-year peace treaty. So I guess treaties in the 30th century are, no better than the ones that get signed in the 21st. So it's just I don't know if it's just people forgetting or what about the history of the Dominators, but or there's just political instability that is not directly put on in the story or on the page, but apparently the Dominators have a problem with the UP, and they keep having to go back to the peace treaty table.
And it's not the first time Levitz has used a story that, like that adventure comic story was, from the summer of 1967. So it was 20 years prior to this one.
Mm-hmm.
And he's done that before where something was 10 years before he decides to do a story. So I almost think he's doing it on purpose in many ways. Bouncing Boy was part of that original story. So was Karate Kid, the original Karate Kid. So it's not, I don't think it's happenstance and coincidence. I think he's really hitting that home.
In fact, I think he's deliberately trying to retell some of these stories with a modern viewpoint, I guess.
Right. We thought that about the Universo project.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of repetition.
Yeah.
that he's employing here.
They don't necessarily come across too menacing. I mean, when the I'll just call them the subs. When the subs battle them, pages 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Yeah, like this whole sequence when they eventually get sucked into that little warp thing. They're not super menacing. They're not, you don't need Mon-El for them. The characters, they do fine. Night Girl does fine. Karate Kid does fine. Bouncing Boy comes across oddly, again, he's a teacher of a school that's teaching these people how to be superhuman. He doesn't come across so skilled. And I thought it was an interesting read because of, under Bendis's watch, he's quote unquote the strongest Legionnaire. He's bouncing out in space, taking out spaceships, and in here he can't even handle, a Okay, so he has a projectile being fired at him. Well, isn't he bouncing boy? Shouldn't it just like bounce off him? You know?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and how odd that a 31st century weapon uses a metallic projectile. How
Right,
convenient.
right,
It
right.
just seems like a conflict that didn't need to be there in the first place.
That's an annual, man. He's got to stretch out these
That's true.
sequences. Yeah.
Very true.
And the way they look, the whole bobblehead look when they're getting sucked away into that warp thing, that's there's a bunch of sequences here and a bunch of imagery that, and I've said it before, that LaRoque is not the strongest when it comes to design sometimes, and that there's that whole thing. I was like, that could have been done better, I think.
I actually like that little
Do
panel
you?
of
You
that.
like that?
Would you say the bobblehead look?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
look at
kind of.
Cosmic Boy. He's the bobblehead.
I mean, it borders on caricature, yes,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I kind of like the depiction of them being stretched through space time in this
Okay.
vortex. But I totally agree with you generally about the art. I was just looking at my notes here. You already mentioned the Legionnaire. Cosmic Boy remembers the previous mission here, which Bouncing Boy was on. Interesting that uh, I said before they call it a subdimension or the 10th dimension. But here for some reason Levitz is calling it the underdimension.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, but I mean, it means the same thing.
Right.
And then I mentioned that Cosmic Boy is using his powers to do things different or do things in an interesting way. Page 26, and they're in the underdimension. They're trying to figure out where they're going because they could be walking for days and not be any closer to where they want to be. Fortunately, thank goodness, Mig was there because plot contrivance. They use he said what on where was that? What was that planet or area that he was originally from?
Lethal?
Yeah, they use the Endron dimension to travel, and so he knew a little bit about it. And Cosmic Boy uses his cosmic powers to basically read the magnetic lines of the various places that are connected to the inner dimension. So then they have a way forward. So
Right.
again, nice little bit of power play there.
Yeah. I think it's smart that Levitz is using Mig in these ways because he does have the connection. He has that familiarity. But if you are going to showcase these characters, you got to give them some reason to
Oh, sure.
warrant being,
Yep.
the sub.
Mm-hmm.
He's certainly the most competent. If his maybe not so much his
Yes.
attitude, but
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's definitely this hmm, the strongest in terms of confidence and ability in this particular tale,
right,
and he does get a lot of screen time showing that off.
right.
Whereas, for example, Comic Queen, while there's a few things that she does right, um, she's constantly running off ahead. That causes a problem with the rest of
Hmm.
the team. Uh, and yeah, as you pointed out, Bouncing Boy seems all but worthless in this story.
I was a little confused so they travel the distance on page 27. They're going forward. They're trying to find a way back. Um, and then they get attacked. But I almost thought they were getting attacked by a foot, and there's like a beam coming out of the tone. I was like, what am I looking at? And it's not until you turn the page, it's like, oh, it's a citadel because she says, oh, look, there's something ahead. It's big gray. I bet there's a Dominator inside, and we see kind of like a silhouette, but the establishing shot at the bottom of 27 is not good. And then you turn the page and you're like, oh, it's some kind of uh, some kind of home, some kind of base of operation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and plus, LaRoque has all these swirling spheres in the background. The coloring
Already,
is,
yeah,
it's just,
yeah.
it's a little too much. It's a
It
little too
should,
much.
yeah, it should have been that the structure obviously should have been um, contrasted with the backgrounds
Yeah.
a lot more. So
Yeah.
right below that, I just want to point out that that panel with Comet Queen, she her team has just been wiped out partly because they were chasing after her after she zoomed off.
Hmm.
Um, but then she starts attacking them. But that shot of her face on, she looks like a living comet right there. I thought that was a nice way to depict her and her emotional state at that time as well.
Right. It's the one time I felt she actually had potential
Mm,
to be something, to
mm-hmm.
be, maybe it's too similar to Wildfire, but uh, in many ways, like think of like Cannonball, right, from the New Mutants
Oh
and the way
yes.
his power works, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's usually only good to make comet gases. She can fly around. She can do a few other things, but here she's explosive with rage, and the design is actually cool.
Yeah.
That's a very good Greg LaRoque. She's almost being warped by her power. I mean, if she is a comet, okay, she should be able to. It should be not just about the gases, but she should be able to tear through blocks of material and people and spaceships. And yeah, that's
Mm,
awesome.
mm-hmm.
So it was the one time I really felt like, oh, she could be threatening if she wanted to be. In contrast, on page 29, that is an awkward karate pose that
Yeah.
on that second panel there.
Yeah. That doesn't even look physically possible.
Yeah, that's not very good. Not very good.
Dramatic, but not anatomically correct, I would think. But we do get on that same page, we do get a little bit of, Mig coming across a bit menacing. You will now point out the direction we must travel to reach the Dominion, or I will remove your head. And and we know he would
Yeah,
do that, despite the fact that he's probably pledged not to take life and all that kind of stuff.
that's what we get in that next sequence on page 31, where Cosmic Boy has to
Mm,
step up and be the leader and say, no, no, we don't kill. And if you want to be called Karate Kid, you better live up to Val Armour's ideals, not just his physical abilities.
mm-hmm. It makes you wonder: is this the first time that Mig has been tested in this way? Would they do they just not know that Mig carries that ferocity and is willing to cross that line? I mean,
Yeah,
it makes sense given his background
right.
on Lethal. So it should not be a surprise. In other words, maybe to Cosmic Boy because he hasn't spent much time with him, but it wouldn't be a surprise to Bouncing Boy, for example. I would think.
Well, again, what is Bouncing Boy teaching? Isn't there like no killing 101, at
Right.
the academy? Like that should be ingrained right from the beginning. I mean, maybe it's because they're in a dire situation, but and his old personality is kicking back up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wrote here, Comic Queen consists constantly leaping before she looks. Meg's suggesting they should have killed, showing cracks in his armor, no pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. Oddly, the one that doesn't get much character spotlight through all this is Night Girl. She actually she's, consistent. She knows how to use her powers. But she's always in the background. I know it's not
Yeah.
necessarily about her, but it should be in some way.
Well, she should certainly have more spotlight, even though she's been around for so long
Right.
and was part of the Cosmic Boy miniseries and a lot of all that stuff. She's going to be a founding member of this team coming up here, and so she should have a little bit more to do, just as we see with Karate Kid and Comic Queen.
Yeah. And I guess maybe because Levitz wants to keep it a surprise for the ending, but in many ways, okay, Cosmic Boy, Bouncing Boy, and Night Girl should be the elder statesman people, and she
Yeah,
should almost be like, okay, well, we had a mission like this and this is what we did, you know? Like
Yes.
even you don't know about it, Cosmic Boy, because again, they always worked in secret, right? They say, "Oh
Hmm.
yeah, we did this, and this is how the subs." So that then by the time you got to the end, they're like, "Oh, that's why she suggests that they should be the sub team
Yeah.
because they just went through an adventure." So
Yep. Perfect.
probably, like I said, these little things is probably why as I was going through it, as I was getting, now we're like halfway through the book, I was like, okay, I don't really feel much of an affinity to any of these, the way these characters are being handled, and um, the villains are generic.
Hmm.
So it's like, what's going to get me through? Well, okay, let me just keep reading and see what happens.
Yeah, if anything, the my biggest complaint about this issue is that we get a few scenes that are essentially repeats of of themselves.
Mm,
The various conflicts, the physical conflicts between our Legion team and the Dominators goes on for several pages and a few scenes. So
yeah.
it doesn't really offer much of anything except as a way to lengthen the plot.
I was all like on page 30 when you actually get to the Dominator world, and you get, the reasoning why this one Dominator has such a hankering to start a war. And I was, give me this caste system. Let's
Mm-hmm.
dig into it,
Yeah, the politics. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm always a fan of that when the book wants to go that way.
and I think going back to what you said earlier about your perception of the Dominators, and not having not at the point that I read this, I had not read that those first appearances of the Dominators,
Hmm.
and so I was surprised that there was even a faction of of Dominator society that didn't want to be conquering,
Right.
and so yeah, it comes across as yeah, here's this thing, but they don't get into it, and that kind of stuff I do find very interesting. Why would the society be this way given
Right.
they're called dominators, so
Right. It was also a little strange that, the first time the subs went up against them on Cthulhu, and they're Cosmic Boy is tearing up the roof and tearing down the roof, and they're destroying the technology, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll get it up and running again." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I know you need to do that because of this next sequence. You got to have a reason for why you know. It was a little I thought it was a little dumb on the Dominator's part, right? Like, I'm sure you're going to talk about Cosmic Boy using his powers here, but
mm.
and then the Dominators are just like, haha, we did it. And it's like, no, what? Did you check bodies? They don't come across as intelligent aliens the way, I don't know if that, maybe they're not so intelligent later, but they just were craftier. They're not so crafty here. They're kind of dumb.
Yeah, I agree, but I have a I have a potential answer to that.
Okay.
I think it's just arrogance.
Yeah.
I the that dominator leader, did we ever get his name actually?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think he just assumes that what he says goes, and all he has to do is deal with these pesky kids and their dog. Um, and of course the plan will work because well, it's his plan.
And he's got the big red circle.
Yeah, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Right. That part is very true to the Dominators that I've read.
Mm. Hmm.
Yes. It's not always because they describe it, or maybe one of the letter call it. Somebody described it as a meritocracy, I guess. And I think it was a letter column or in the actual issue, like, but are they really earning that do they really earn that disc
Oh yeah,
in fair
yeah,
ways?
yeah. Here's the on page 30, um, from the
Oh, right.
Xenocivics 2987 edition. I guess that's a book. The precise form of government of the Dominion is not definable by an Earth historical precedent. There appear to be elements of feudal and dictatorial systems commingling or commingled with a ruthless meritocracy.
Yeah, that's great.
Ruthless meritocracy. Isn't that an oxymoron?
You want to talk about Cosmic Boy's use of his powers here?
Well, that is, I think that's just more of the same. But he's taking on this big warship thing. He says pure pulling isn't enough. Have to concentrate, and we get to see those concentric circles, signifying his power. They use that consistently. I really like that. But he says use my magnetism more precisely, and then you see things start to be, conduits being pulled out of panels, and things are breaking and whatnot. So he basically just busts the ship
Right.
instead of just trying to pull the whole thing down because it's just too powerful.
I did like that Meg recognized that Night Girl has some ability. You are wise in the martial arts for an amateur Night Girl, but now you must stand back for a master. I mean, it's a little bit of a compliment, and then he takes away.
Yeah. Oh, the misogyny in this team.
I had skill enough to handle this many when still on lethal, and since I have had the benefit of the sensei's lessons, you are like straw in my path. Right? Like they shouldn't be. They they should be easily defeatable. I don't see them being much of a threat.
A
So
physical threat. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And see that's another problem or problematic element to the dominators in this story is that they all seem to rush the legionnaires instead of using, I mean, we do see them using weapons and whatnot, but there's nothing about the Dominators' previous appearances that suggests to me that they are like the Kuns
yeah,
and
right,
are about physical battle.
right,
They seem more like the kind that would stand back and shoot you from a distance. But we don't get that. I mean, very little of that anyway. So
yeah.
it's just again very convenient the way that certain elements of the story progress.
And then we get the main Dominator. He's going to try to activate that Star Killer, Star Striker device to blow up Weber World, where the negotiations are taking place, and that's where we get this, out of off panel. Kind of makes sense, but when did it actually happen that bouncing boy contacted his wife, Duo Damsel, and said, "Hey, we got a mission for you." Or I guess he sent it to Vizilad. As soon as Vizilad sent word to the Academy about your mission, I did what you suggested. Uh, Left one of my bodies at the mission monitor board, and the other went to Cthulhu with a bunch of Academy students, which I'm sure we'll talk about that page.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was
but
fun.
I was that page is fun, but I was kind of like, wait, what? What happened? What
Yeah,
just happened?
yeah.
Where?
Mm-hmm.
How? Who? What?
Again, convenient.
Yeah, very convenient.
Just and why do this? You're already introducing a new team, and while we do get, sorry if I'm jumping into it before you were ready, um, but while we do have many recognizable characters, there's a few of them that are new here.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point of, I guess, diluting your debut for this new subs team by throwing in all these other characters too?
Right. Why wouldn't this, by the end of this, why wouldn't Cosmic Boy go, maybe I should be a teacher at the academy?
Yeah.
Why is it us, other than because it's Night Girl's suggestion? There's nothing to suggest that, well, also that the Legionnaires are off planet. But really they're just off planet because they're being an honor guard to the treaties. Like if they knew any of this was going on, wouldn't half of them go, okay, let's go do something about it? It's not like
Yep.
they were incapacitated,
Mm-hmm.
So um the outcome is I understand what Levitz is doing, but I'm not necessarily sure the path to it was correct.
Yeah.
But it gives, Cosmic Boy, it gives Night Girl some hope, it gives Cosmic Boy some hope. Okay, I get it.
Mm-hmm. And theoretically, you get former Legionnaires, Bouncing Boy and Duo Damsel, more prominence in potential stories.
Right. And you put Comic Queen on a team finally. She's been denied so many times,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, let's talk about that page. That's an interesting page. I had to do a lot of research with that, as I'm sure you did, because visually I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Who are these new folks? Yeah, I definitely did that investigation. So I'm curious if what you found too, because I came up
Yeah.
with a blank on at least one of these.
All right. Well, let's go. So from the left, I initially thought, what is Shadow Kid?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I initially was like, wait, is that Crystal Kid the way he used to look? Or is it Shadow Lad
Yeah.
or it's Shadow Lad? Yeah.
No, Shadow Kid.
Oh, it's Shadow Kid? I never
So
remembered that.
okay, so I did that too. I was like, my when I wrote it out, I wrote Shadow Lad, and then
Right.
as I was doing the research, everything identifies him as Shadow Kid, and I don't remember what he's identified as in his Who's Who entry.
Yeah, it's Shadow
But
Kid. Yeah.
is it okay? Yeah, because I think they use Shadow Lad and Shadow Kid interchangeably at times,
Mm,
which is part of the problem here. But
yeah.
yeah, I that's interesting. I hadn't picked up on the Crystal Kid thing because the last time I saw him, he had short hair.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's the way Crystal Kid used to look, but
Mm.
the design of the costuming, it is Shadow Kid. It's the hair is it just threw me. You're not seeing it in color, so it's not you don't see
Oh
his
yeah.
skin,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, the tall person is uh, never been named.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is did we see him in 24? I can't remember now if we saw him in 24 or not.
Someone did refer to him as a uh, Herculean
Yeah,
looking character. So that's my unofficial name for him. He's the Herculean.
Herculean boy. Yeah. And he does make some appearances. Oh yeah, no, he is in 24.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he looks different. I don't know if you can see it here. See him in the purple and the white here, but he has the
Oh, that guy. Okay.
yeah, he has the striping things, and
Yes. Okay.
he's just a little bit colored differently.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I'll skip over Laurel for now. All right, then you
Okay.
have Power Boy.
Wait a minute. We got somebody in between.
Well, yeah, I was gonna go to he.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's like a Feral Lad 2, Feral Lad
Oh,
3.
okay. Okay.
Who
That's what
knows?
I was wondering if you thought the same thing because that's what it suggests to me is
Sure.
it's this is another feral lad looking character.
Yeah, it's again no coloring to him. He doesn't look like any of the Academy members we've seen. So,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not described anywhere. So,
Right.
if this was Steve Lido, we would know exactly who everybody was. Then we get Power Boy. He looks a little different. Sometimes he has the lapels, the
Oh,
collars.
yeah, that's
Sometimes he
right.
doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he left. I thought he left the Academy when he wasn't picked.
I thought he did too.
I swear I read that somewhere, and then here he is again.
Hmm.
And then next to him is Mandala.
Mm-hmm.
This is her first appearance, although you could make the argument that she's also in 24 because there's some green girls around there, and it's like,
Mm.
you could say that's her. But they're saying this is her first appearance. I think she's just a little too close to Mentala.
Oh, right. Yeah.
She apparently had,
Mandela.
yeah, she
Yeah.
has psionic powers,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, that's not good. Next to her is a character known as Westerner,
Mm-hmm.
who also is in issue 24. Although the DC Wiki says this is his first appearance, it is not, because I'm looking right at page issue 24, and he's there. We don't know what he is. He's maybe some kind of like Captain America of the future or something.
What I've read somewhere is that he has energy absorption abilities that give him strength and stamina.
Make,
So, yeah,
makes no sense with the name.
I know.
like Westerner. Why does he have the ego motif? You know, is he?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like he should be like a Nightwing mixed with Captain America kind of
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
The hooded girl, that's Nightwind. The one floating above, that's Lamprey.
Mm-hmm.
Duo damsel. Um, Finally found the name for that little creature that likes to eat tech. His name is Irk.
Irk. Yep.
Yeah,
Because I think it said that's the name or the sound it makes
yeah,
whenever he's actually said anything.
right.
So
And then
fun.
Laurel Kent sporting for the first time clothing.
One, clothing, and two,
Right, two, a super costume with the S sigil and
it, very much a super man, super boy. That's what I wanted to say. But it's more of a Superman suit than anything else.
yeah,
And what?
yeah. I'm saying that she knows that Superboy was killed and she's honoring her ancestor by
Okay.
finally donning the costume. That's
But
my
but is
take
it?
on it.
I think that's true. But it given what you've said before about Superboy and post crisis continuity,
Hmm.
is does she would she consider Superboy an ancestor?
She probably has questions.
Mm,
Does she say Superboy or does she say Superman? She says Superman because she, in her first appearance, she was supposed to look exactly like Lois Lane, right?
okay.
Wasn't that the whole thing that I thought that she
I don't.
looked like Lois Lane? Um, so if she's a descendant, was she? I think she was more a descendant of Superman than Superboy,
Right.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
So
Which that would make sense that she's finally embracing her lineage. But yeah,
right,
I like that the extra layer that you threw on there that with Superboy's death. I mean, obviously the costume's the same, so
right,
that makes a lot of sense, and that also means that she's the only one who seems to be acknowledging beyond issue 38
right.
that Superboy has died.
For now, yeah.
Yeah.
I hope. Yeah, it's just it's an interesting choice. I really would love to know, is it was that Paul Levitz who said put her in that costume? Was that Greg LaRoche who was like, yeah, I'll do it? You know? So so apparently, let's see, Superboy meets her in 2976 in a story. Let's see, Superboy 217. Uh, and he saves her from being hit by a train, and she introduces herself as Elna at the time, which is an anagram for Lane.
Mm,
And I think I'm assuming that's a correct thing. I know I've looked through that issue, but I don't remember.
yeah. Same.
And that she says she was a direct descendant of Superman.
Superman. Okay. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. That all makes sense.
yeah,
So yeah, and I'm really curious. Are we going to see her? Well, I know we see her in an upcoming issue, but not in the way that I would like to see it.
right.
So I'm curious if we're going to see her continue to wear that that Superman costume.
Yeah, I think this is the only time we see
Yeah.
it. Unfortunately, once again. And then we get the epilogue. You want to talk us through the epilogue here?
So I think you've mentioned it before, but we get that conversation between Night Girl and Cosmic Boy. She says again, doesn't it make you want to be an active Legionnaire again? She won't just give this up. Um, but I thought it was pretty cool that Cosmic Boy said, well, he says no, not really. But he tells her, Senate Girl's gone that route, but I always thought she would. If you want to join, and she quickly cuts him off, not without you. So at least there is that. She is committed to the idea of being a superhero, a legionnaire, if she can be, but only if she can do it with Cosmic Boy, which
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's not the most healthy relationship, but Anyway, he says, I was right to resign, Lita. Uh, he didn't feel like himself during the whole battle with the time trapper, which I found that bit of dialogue curious. I understand, that could be just a reaction to things being, thrown for a loop about the what you thought was history, what you thought was who Superboy was and what he was all about, and then finding out that everything everything that you thought you knew was wrong.
Hmm.
But I'm not quite understanding I didn't feel like myself during the whole battle with the time trapper. So do you have any thoughts on that? Or
No,
is this just something that Levitz is throwing in here to foreshadow something?
maybe because he wasn't. I really didn't. I don't know. I don't know if I can. Is it because he was sort of in the background for a lot of that, or not in control? Cosmic Boy's not used to being in control, and that whole storyline was very chaotic.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were more reacting than acting.
Yeah, very true. And as he says this, they're walking right in front of what looks like to be a statue of Superboy.
Yeah. And that's where I
Anyway.
was that's where I was like, okay, finally we
Mm-hmm.
know that this is after that whole stuff. That's good.
Right, right. They compliment each other. Nightgirl saying, "I'll abide by your decision," and he appreciates her solidarity. Uh, but it's only because I agreed to your other suggestion and set up this meeting, and we get that on the final page of the story. We see the members of that team that we've been following through the annual sitting around a table. With Duo Damsel now.
Yeah.
And he says, "Welcome to the new Legion of Substitute Heroes. We're going to be different from the old subs. No secrecy, no regular meetings or headquarters, just a backup since we proved to ourselves we could stand in for the real Legion if we had to. And we can do it again if they ever need us, right?" And they all stand up cheering, right? Which is kind of funny considering he was like, "What are you guys doing here?"
Well, also just that who was proving anything? Why? Where was that coming into play?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
I,
Well,
I
I
thought,
guess you could kind of say, the Academy members are trying to prove themselves,
sure,
but that's not quite what he's getting at there.
yeah, and I mean
Or go ahead.
well, I was gonna say he doubted their abilities to begin with, and then
Mm.
maybe
Well, and maybe he's also this. Maybe this goes back to the thing that I was just asking about. Maybe he's been doubting himself
yeah.
and his role in this era of the Legion, even though he's not um, actually spoken about it out loud.
So when you got to that, what was your reaction once you got there?
Um, I was actually quite excited for the possibility. What are they what could they do with the characters?
Right.
What are we going to see? That how are they going to interact with the others? Oh, uh, what would um the other Academy members? What would the other former subs think of all this? They weren't asked to join, or they haven't been asked to join, or just the inter dynamics of all that. With Polar Boy being the leader of the Legion, a former sub who disbanded the subs to join the Legion, and now one of the founders of the Legion is reforming his old subs team with a different sort of mission. It would just be so much fun to have these little conversations or little jabs, between them or whatever. So yeah, that kind of stuff would be kind of cool to see. But again, I don't think we are.
Just as Polar Boy inherits the Legion, the founding member of the Legion inherits the subs. I mean, that's just crazy. Crazy talk.
It has a bit of poetic symmetry
Yeah.
that I like. Yeah.
And then it wraps up with pinups similar to the pinups that we got in issue 17 of all these characters, which they're fine. I took something, so I read the letter column for this issue in issue number 44, and there wasn't much that I pulled from, but I had Paul Levitz wrote in response to a letter about, oh, what did they say? It was something about like, why don't you use some of the sillier characters or something like that? And he says, Levitt says, we admit an occasional longing for the simpler days ourselves, but and keep they're hard to recapture and keep a contemporary audience.
Mm-hmm. I read that too. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, and it almost made me like think of this issue in a slightly different way, right? Like he obviously was not going to put the Keith Giffen stamp on this because that's not what he wants to do. And that's also not what he's really referring to,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but the days of arm fall off boy and you know,
No, no, because Arms Fall Off Boy is in the new movie. Come
well,
on.
but the cycle continues. We
Right.
always
That's
we
true.
always go back again. Uh so I took his point and I've said it before. He's a little bit more of a clinical writer. He's a little bit more by the books, sort of dot the everything, dot your I's, cross your T's,
Mm-hmm.
not so emotional as opposed to situational. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I like that comment.
It's interesting though, because is it is it based on that they've tried to do certain things like that, not necessarily with Legion, but DC Comics generally back then, and they were not successful, or is it that um, as other creators came in, especially during the 80s, and they tried different things and matured, titles and characters and situations, um, are they just assuming because those sell well that the audience doesn't want those sillier aspects that we had seen before?
Right. I mean, the book is very popular right now in '87. So, and they just went through the crisis. So the whole idea was to get rid of the silly stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a serious
Right.
medium,
It's a
comic books,
serious DC universe.
superhero comic books.
Funny.
I did note, speaking of the letter column in issue 44, the letters that they printed were generally positive about the team, the subs team, though they did, I noticed, disagree about the who should be on the subs roster.
Of
So
course. Of course.
let's see here. Uh, Bill, one of the letter writers, said, "You've established a little more competent, battle-ready team in comparison." To which I was like, "Curse you, Giffen! You've tainted the subs forever." But I did like Bill's idea of using the subs to sub in for Legionnaires needing to take time off, so you
Mm,
could rotate them in when needed. I mean, I guess you could really just extrapolate that to the Legion Academy too, because that would give them much better experience working as a Legionnaire than going off on some science police sanctioned
right.
repair job.
Right.
So
Or if they get injured and need to step out, they
yeah.
always before they got the new five, they were often saying, "Oh, we're down to 19 members." I was like, well, that's a big group, but they're like 19. Okay, well, there's your opportunity. If somebody goes down,
Mm-hmm.
you call up whatever academy member that either resembles their powers or you feel is the most ready. That'd be amazing. I'd love to see
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great suggestion.
Yeah. So I'm curious, did they ever, future uh, Legion series, did they ever pick up on that and do anything with it? Because I think that's a
Yeah,
brilliant oversight
right.
uh, that they should have done something with.
Right. Let's rewrite decades of Legion comics to make that happen. Yeah, it's smart. It's very smart.
uh, uh, Letter writer Rin, I think, did I spell that right? Pointed out that Night Girl's outfit was different on the cover than in the issue, which I had totally missed.
Hmm.
And I think, and then finally, Paul tells us that issue 40, which at the time was only a few weeks out, from when the annual came out, will feature the return of the new Starfinger.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, Peter, I'm not looking forward to that.
Okay. All right.
Not my favorite new or reimagined villain in
Yeah.
the Legion lore.
All right. We'll have to see. All right. So we put this one to sleep, put this to bed.
I think we're done with this one.
Okay. Speaking of the next episode, we could jump to the regular sequence again, Legion of Superheroes issue 40, or coming February 7th, 2023, the Legion of Superheroes animated movie.
Oh,
So
Peter's throwing me for a loop here.
are you getting that? You getting a physical copy of that? Is that how you're going to
Uh,
watch it?
I haven't
Or,
ordered it. I can tell you that I was going to
oh,
order it. I didn't realize it was coming out then.
if
So
with our we're recording on January 28th, so it's not that far away.
yeah,
So whatever episode we put out next, that's what we're going to do. It'll be a surprise for everybody.
I wonder. Sometimes I wonder this, Peter. Do the folks who listen to the show, do they listen as we release them, or do they just listen to the main the main book or the main series, right, where we're talking about the numbered issues, and they skip over things like this where we announce such things,
Right.
and they don't know what we're doing. So
Maybe. If they're like me, even with my podcasting, I got to do things in order.
mm-hmm.
If you have a 200 episode podcast and I jumped in at 176, or I've discovered you at I got to go back to episode 1.
Oh, you're crazy.
Yeah. Because I got to hear the continuity. I got to hear how you develop. Oh, we didn't talk about the Who's Who page because there's nothing to really talk about.
Yeah, you're right. We didn't.
There's nothing.
Yeah, there isn't. I basically have no notes.
It's Greg LaRocque and Mike DiCarlo. It's not the best group shot. It's the title, logo design, font design is bland. They just need, it's a revised entry because it's a different makeup from what they featured in the first volume of Who's Who.
So okay, and so that was my only note. Why is Duo Damsel not listed with the team? So was that a late addition on Levitz's part in the annual? Because this
Maybe.
came out first.
And she really wasn't part of the first adventure.
Sure.
She was, but she wasn't.
But yeah, that's all I have. Let's see here. Did you notice? So the cover is by Eduardo Barreto. And as far as I could tell, only Karate Kid is shown on the cover.
Comic Queen is too.
Is she, oh, you're right. I just saw her just as you started to say that. Okay, right. So there you go.
Right. Because the other members had entries in volume 1.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. I totally missed her. And she's much more prominent on the back cover than Karate Kid is.
Right. He's like hiding in the background. He was like an afterthought.
Oh, well.
So yeah, we'll do more of that. We're digging into the Who's Who update. We have plans on down the road how to do the Who's Who and the Legion of Superheroes, which is mentioned in the letter column of that issue of Who's Who update.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll just, whenever we see a Legion entry, we will discuss it. And that brings this episode to a close. Yes?
Yes, it does.
All right. Thank you for joining us for this Tales episode. If you want to reach out, Peter at thedailyrios.com.
Or longboxreview@gmail.com.
And as we mentioned, next episode will either be a Tales or Legion Project episode. We don't know just yet, but stick around and find out. All right, Eric. See you next time.
All right. Have a good one, Peter.